Hey friends, Dan Prozowski from allaboutminibikes.com, and here to say hi and wishing everybody a happy New Year 2022. And I hope you had a great Christmas and New Year's and that you were safe, happy, and healthy, and hope everybody stays that way. And wishing everybody the best. We've been really busy with a lot of projects going on, and I don't even want to talk about them because it's just really tough right now. Everything gets delayed, and sometimes hard to get things you need when you got people trying to help you and work for you, either bending pipe or making weldments and things like that. So there's a delay, but we're pushing on with it. But the other day I was I was sitting up watching a little bit of TV, half reading, bored out of my skull at night one evening, and I picked up my phone and I just popped in mini bikes into Google, and I started looking at mini bikes, and then I was looking at some of the mini bikes that are being sold now, okay? And it made me wonder because as I was looking at a couple of them, the inexpensive ones are about, I want to say somewhere around $400. I don't know. So I'm looking at them, and they're saying, "Oh, we picked this up at Farm and Fleet, and some of these other places, Tractor Supply, stuff like that, even Walmart." So I'm looking, and I start going down into the comments, and I'm seeing a lot of negative comments. Okay, like the negative were outweighing the positive by far, and some of them, the ones that were scary, were the ones that were. They're saying, "Hey, look it's really bad. It didn't run. It was leaking oil right away. It was really dinged up. All this stuff." And the fact that they ended up taking the bikes back to wherever they bought it, let's say it was a Farm and Fleet or a Tractor Supply, and they'd say, "Oh, they were really nice. They took the bike back," and they're really not supposed to do that. You're supposed to call the factory. Problem with that taking it back is then the dealer takes it back. They don't want to lose the customer, meaning the shop, whether it's Tractor Supply. They send it back, and then the company loses out big time. Again, nothing against it. That's the way it is. But what that reminds me of is when I got this Motovox. When I got the Motovox, we had no problems with it, really. The quickest thing we had to do at the time was to take the clutch off an oil, and it was one of the big problems of it. But we had it, and I still like the bike. Well, I'll talk a little bit about it, the difference between that one and my 1970 Ramjet. But the issue that happened, why Motovox went out of business, from what I could tell from speaking to one of the guys that was either a mechanic or something, because right as they're going out of business, he tells me what happens. And people had so many problems with these bikes. They weren't big problems, they were small, like that clutch net. Well, they would take it back to, I got mine at Sears. I'll talk about that. Well, they'd take it back to Sears. Sears was already in trouble, so they don't want to lose customers, so they would take it and send it back to Motovox, which I think was in Missouri. And now Motovox bites it a couple different ways. You know, they paid it, they got it over there, now they had to take it back, so they lost tons of money. You could say it was their own fault because they didn't have a super duper dependable bike, meaning the clutch and that. So I sometimes wonder if that could happen in the mini bike market again. If these bikes keep coming across and people take them back, and of course whoever sold it to them, the company, they want to keep the customer, so they send them back. It could make them tank. I don't know, it's just food for thought. When I read that, and remembering how I talked to the guy at Motovox, it's sketchy, my memory on that. I used to go on their site a lot, looking to see what else they had. But so it's sketchy of who I talked to. But then I remember it was after it, they had already sold everything off, and that was the reason they told me that they really went out of business and the bikes were good. I had no problems with mine other than doing that clutch. I'll admit that. But what I did notice about that bike, and let's say my 1970 Ramjet. Now, my 70 Ramjet isn't totally, somebody went over the chrome fenders with some cracked paint or something, I don't know. So that's got to be done. But the shocks are definitely not original. This I know. These are bigger shocks. Different. They're not stocking because we do have one. Our other Ramjet, the blue one, Trailjet, it does have the stock ones on there. But if you take a look at the bike on here, so this is a 1970 Tecumseh 4 horsepower. you can see everything in here is just heavy metal. It's very, very much quality, okay? When you got a bike back then, it was quality. It was just quality. You didn't have problems with it till it got old and you just neglected it or rode it through too much mud and water and things like that. But it was all heavy metal and very, very good. Now, that being said, that's the materials that they had back in the day. But if you take a look at, let's say, the linkage on the Motovox here, it looks like it's cheap aluminum, tin, stuff like that. The springs, the everything. It's just really, really cheap. And it's cheap because it's what they can do nowadays, okay? It's less expensive. They can do it. It's lightweight. But then you get what you pay for. And that's the difference between buying, let's just say you went out, I'm just going to say a Coleman, okay? You bought a Coleman mini bike, but, and you paid whatever it would be, $800 or $900, or you went to a Honda dealer and bought the Z50, let's just say. What you're going to pay for that, but then the quality and the parts. But I've not had a lot of problems with this, I'll admit that, but that's the same. So right here, this bike is actually all original, except for my carburetor. So we used to ride a lot in the sand, and then I had the carb off, I cleaned it. It still wasn't quite right, so I bought another one offline, literally, it was $12. Shipping, no, it was $12. So how could you beat that? But I kept the original, and now I'm really, really glad that I did. The thing I didn't like about the new one was that the hookup for the gas was not like, it wasn't coming out the side. This one goes the top, so it's a real bare running the gas line that way, and I still don't like it. So what I'm going to do in the very near future is I'm going to pull this apart, because people have been asking me questions. I'm going to take it off and show people, you know, what the float bowl is, what a jet is, and so on and so forth. That's not what this video is about, but I'm going to do that either later this week or most likely probably next week, because it's already Thursday. And one of the other things, because I was a guy who was there in the early 70s and that, I've got a lot of old timers like me. We talk about the bikes in the old days and which we wish we had and didn't have. And the only thing I have in my original Ramjet is me popping a wheelie out in my back alley. I used to ride it up and down, but this right here is the actual certificate. I wonder how many, if you've had a Motovox and you still have this actual certificate, and this is the owner's, we'll call it, I don't know, certificate I'll call it, but this is what I kept this. And I try to keep the bike as stock as I can also. And one of the reasons why I do that is that as a person who wishes he still had his stuff, I bought this mini bike for the kids back in 2014, and of course Sarah's the one who really loved it and got into it. So I'd like her to have this bike years and years from now, and I think it would be like me. I'd like to have some of the original stuff. So having this certificate and things like that, original ownership of it, may mean something. Most people throw it away because like, nah, it don't mean anything, it's junk. But you don't know in 30, 40 years, you know, to a person who was 12 and all of a sudden they're, let's say, 50 years old maybe or something, or even 40 or 30, they'll say, oh, I wish I had that. So anyway, that's why I do that, because I every day have people write us talking about the old bikes they had, whether it was a Hilltopper, an Indian, a Rupp. It just doesn't matter, and it's all gone, and all they have is the memory of it, and that can sometimes be pretty vague. But anyway, so I thought I would talk about that, the difference in there, and that's why I said, could the mini bike market crash? And I meant it in that way that it's so cheap, and people keep taking back to stores, that then the stores refuse to carry them anymore because they don't want the liability of it, and then the company would go under. I don't know if that'll happen, because now the stuff is all that comes from China. And back in the day, in the early 70s, even though this bike was actually Taiwan, you know, you had your little Indian and Rupp and others, and if you look in the old magazines, you'll find companies all over the country. So there were so many different manufacturers of mini bikes, just getting the stuff, putting them together, that it was different. So anyway, I just thought I'd talk about that, and people always ask me about the old days of mini bikes and such. And what seems to be new now will be old one day. You know, at one time, I don't know how many millions of Model Ts were made, and they sat there and junked them all. But if you had one that was doggone near original, you'd be able to probably retire with the money. So next week, probably, I'll take this apart, show it. I put these videos on YouTube and on our All About Mini Bikes Facebook page and website. And we'll get into more about that. And then as I progress with our prototype for the Little Red Racer, I will show that. We got a couple different frames in the mix right now, and it's just taking time. That's all I can say. It's just taking time to get it right. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, comment below. If you don't like it, you can say what you want to. That's fine. And please share it with your friends, and join our pages, which whether it's the Facebook one or the or a website or whatever. And Sarah's not here because she's in school, and that's one thing about your kids. They start growing up, and once they start growing up, they have all kinds of stuff going on, and little by little, you kind of lose them to other things, and it gets a little sad sometimes. But she still likes the bikes. We still do it, but her schedule just is very, very tough, as she's also playing lacrosse on scholarship, and it's pretty much demanding. So if you got kids or grandkids, just love them and do what you can with them while they're little, with mini bikes, because one day they start to grow up, and it's not quite the same. They still love it, but just like you did, they'll have other interests also. So thanks for watching. Send your comments if you want, and please subscribe to our YouTube All About Mini Bikes page also, and look forward to the next one we've got coming out real soon. Take care till then, and ride safe and happy.